Okay, so I come back to switch.h. So we'll create a new function. This concept right here is known as overloading functions, and they are differentiated by the data type. So they can be the same name. They have to have different data types so that the compiler knows which one we want to use at runtime, right? So if we send a number, it'll use this one. If we send a character, it'll use this one. Okay, so we declare we write the code for the function in the CPP. Let's make sure we don't forget to return the return val. And then we can create our switch statement option. Maybe if I spell it right. And we can say case character, right? So single quote case A, return val. I don't know, I'll just assign the value A. I will unlock the quiz at the end of class so that you all can see it. Yeah, I was gonna say that, but I was reading a question. Yeah, so if it's a character, meaning one letter, a char type, then we use single quote. And since we are using char for the option, then this has to be a character. And a string, it's a sequence of characters. We have to use double quotes. Please don't forget that. And we'll go ahead and type the default piece, return val, and we'll say invalid option. We'll just use, I guess, ABC. So questions? Any questions here? Like I'm just showing that you can use the switch statement with a char type. And we can proceed to the test case. It'll be test examples test module 3 test. And maybe we can cheat, right? We will use letters instead. So for this one, I'll use like the letter Z. And for this one, the letter Y. And I just did one so far, so I'll mute those assertions for now, and then I'll just use the letter A here. And I think we are returning the letter A, right, instead of option A. So we're testing to make sure that if the letter's not A, then the default code block executes. And well, here, right, we gotta make sure we break, otherwise we're gonna return invalid option every single time. Sure. Yeah, so for now we don't need this piece. That's the way it should look. Also, when you copy a test case, like I did in my case, this sequence right here, this string right here, cannot be the same. So I have to do here like part 2 or char or something. If they are the same name, the test cases will not run. So, I mean, it'll tell you like 2 test cases have the same name. So please make sure that you always have a different name for the test cases. Okay, so we should be able to run this test case. Run in terminal. Also, while it's building, technically you can also use bool, but it's kind of like, I mean, why do you want to use bool? In that case, just use an if else, because you can only use the switch for 0 or 1 or false and true. So it's kind of like, well, I mean, just use an if else. It'll let you, it'll give you a warning, but I mean, it's kind of like, doesn't make sense to use a Boolean type here. So it's building. And green is good so far. So A, menu A equals A, and then if we type anything else, it returns invalid option. So now we can come back here and we can code, I guess we'll just do ABC. B, C, B, C. Now we can add those two assertions in our test case to make sure that if we use B and C, we will get B and C back as a return value. So I can go here. That one should return B, this one C, as long as I put character B here and character C there. And then I can go ahead and execute this, run in terminal. Well, this is building. Remember the break, like if you eliminate breaks, then you can have the next case execute. So for no, because I mean the code block's gonna end anyway, and it'll jump to this statement. So it should be fine. Okay, what is this? Yeah, we'll do something in main. I was gonna say something now. Well, I guess when well, before you. Well, I was gonna say something about the switch. I forgot. Okay, so we need to. Did we run them? I don't know if we did. Oh, let me execute it. I think we did. Let's see here. 24, yeah, we had 22 and now we have 24 assertions. So \s enter. I don't trust myself, so I did, right? So A returns, character A returns the string A, and character B returns the string B, and C returns the string C. Anything else will return invalid option. So that's how you can get an idea of how you can create like a DOS menu for C++. Yeah, I mean, you can even do this, something like this for Python, but you would have to use the if-else if. Okay, so we go to main, just to add that piece. We'll come here, main. Let me see here. We have an enter number. Okay, so or maybe user choice. Okay, so if choice equals 0, or maybe we'll just do choice, then we'll use this block code here. Else we'll do something else. Okay, and then now we have to prompt the user. So we say cout enter 0 for, I don't know, switch with number. Or 1 for switch with char. And then we prompt them cin choice. Of course, if they enter something else other than 0 or 1, then it'll go into else. So maybe we don't need this, right? So we'll do that. Makes it clear. So anything else other than 0 will execute this code block over here. And here we want to create a char letter, and then we ask the user to enter a letter. What's wrong with me? Enter a letter. Capture it from the keyboard with cin. Save the value into letter. And then we can simply say cout. And we call the function menu with a letter. And that should display something for us. Okay, so questions here? Okay, we go to CMake, 03 module switch, and we will run the main piece, running terminal. Enter 0 for switch with number is 1, so enter a letter B, and it displays B. I can run it again with up arrow since I don't have a loop. And I'll enter 1, and I'll type like the letter F, invalid option, right? So, and then we can run it one more time. We enter 0, entering number 3, option 3, and then whatever we were displaying with the immediate if. So, any questions here? So that's how, I mean, you have a choice. Like, oh, I remember what I was going to say now about that switch. So for the homework assignment that'll be posted tonight, you'll have to use like eliminating break statements. So remember, like if you eliminate this and you eliminate this, then it'll execute this piece too, right? So meaning return val will have the, eventually will have the value C. So and I think I posted the hint on the homework too. So okay, so I think this one's good, so we can save this example. We'll go ahead and stage the changes, and then we will say switch with char, and we'll commit, and then we will push. And that should send it to GitHub. Okay, so we were talking about loops, and we went over the while loop, and we created a simple example, right? Just to show how looping structures work, which I'm sure you all are familiar with Python, and Python has a while loop. And also Python had a for loop, right? So C++ has a for loop too, so that's what we'll cover today. So we come here, and we have the for loop. So at a page 4, I forgot my pen. So we have the for loop, lowercase f, and then we have variable declaration, variable, and init, right? Initialize the variable, and then a comma, and then some Boolean expression, and then increment, or maybe we decrement, and then open close curly brace. And let me make this larger. Right, so that's the syntax for the for loop. Again, in the for loop, these guys are optional, but my recommendation is use them. That'll save you time. If you don't use them, then only the first statement after the for loop will be executed. So if you wanted 3 to execute, and you think they're going to execute, and you don't have the open close curly brace, meaning you don't have the code in here, some code here and code here, then only this guy would execute without the curly braces. I always say just use them. Like, okay, so we come and we create an example. So let's see here. That's a simple example. We use a void loop. A void function. So a void function with what we know right now about C++, we can't test it. We cannot test the void function because it doesn't return a value, and we can't break into the code that makes the void function. So it's saying void function display numbers, and we accept the numbers. So this function will simply display numbers to screen. We'll go to for.cpp. So open close curly brace and write code for function display numbers that accept a number and displays every number that precedes it starting from 1. Okay. So we set the for loop. So we need to initialize, we declare and initialize a variable. So we say integer. We can say like I equals. We can say 1, or we can say 0, and then some Boolean expression. So then we want to iterate up until the number. So we can say well, I less than num. And then we can say increment I, open close curly brace. So again, let's walk through this. I think you all learned this in Python, right? So the for loop, so we create a variable and we initialize it to 0. And then we have a condition is I less than num, and then increment I. And then we do something, comes back around, it'll check the condition again. And as long as the condition is false, it'll keep on incrementing the value I. Do we have IOStream? Okay, we do have IOStream up here. So meaning we can now say cout I plus 1. And that should give us the desired output, right? So that should display 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to screen. And we keep what's common in C++, like initializing variables to 0. Like loops most of the time start at 0. And when we get into lists, then we will see that we also want to start them at 0. Some teams, they mix and match I's initialized to 0 and 1, but that may cause confusion, right? So it's either like, if you're going to initialize them to 0, then stick to 0. And seldom do I see teams initializing values to 1. So again, we cannot test this function. This function will simply display numbers, so we don't have a test case for this, but we can call it in main. So we go here, for.h is there, and yeah, question up there? No? Okay. Okay, go ahead. No. In this case, I just chose that just to show how the for loop works. Yep. Okay, so for.h, let me see, for.h, for.cpp. So what I'm going to do is, no, I won't do that. Whatever. I'll just include IOStream over here again. So IOStream, and I'll prompt the user for some number. Enter a number. Capture input. Save it to some variable. We don't have a variable, but we can create it. So we declare it int value. So now we can capture input from the keyboard and save the value, the value captured from the keyboard to this variable value. And then we can simply call the display numbers function. And let's see what happens. Any questions here? Okay, no questions. So then we go to CMake right here, and then we go hunting for module 4, for loop executable. It's right here. Right click, run in terminal, enter number 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So questions on how this is working? Yeah, you can do C in, C out, as long, since I was just going to use it once. I mean, I went this route, but if you don't want to do that, then you can just do using C out, using C in, and that'll work too. Yep. Yeah, I'll run it. Oh, go ahead. Yeah. CPP. Make sure you have a semicolon here, and that you declare the variable. This one right here, int I equals 0. Make sure you don't have a semicolon right here. Yeah. If it's exactly like mine, it should work, because you just saw me run it. Any other questions? Everyone's comfortable with how a for loop works? Yes. Yeah, we just have the function prototype. Sure. No questions? Yes, we initialize it to 0, and what we can do is we can say like I is, and display I, and then we can say I plus 1 is or equals, right? And then we can execute it again so that you can see what's happening. So we come here and we run it. So enter number 5. So I is 0, but if we do I plus 1, then it displays 1, and then I is 1, right? So I plus 1, 2. So to answer your question, yes, we initialized I to 0, but to display the numbers like the requirements state like this, then we have to execute I plus 1. Yes. Yes. So you mean like skip this? Here? That's just to display. Notice that I am just saying I plus 1. I am not saying I equals I plus 1. So this statement is just saying I plus 1, meaning whatever this value is, display it, but we are not overriding I. This overrides I. This statement right here. This overrides this I right here. So in Python and in C++, whenever we want to reassign, we have to say I equals something again. And we're not doing that here. All we're saying here is I plus 1. So we're just using the value of I, which is 0 plus 1, and display that. But we're not saving it to any variable. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Sure. Yes. Yeah, and we showed that right here, right? So I is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then if we do I plus 1, then it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And Grecia, she brought up a good point, right? Why isn't it overriding I? Well, we're not reassigning I. We're just using the value of I to add to 1. Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Plus plus 1 is plus plus I. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, so okay, let me see. Is there another example? So we should probably do another example, right? So maybe do what we did with this example. Do it with a for loop. Sum of squares with a for loop. Okay, so let me see here. So int well, maybe not sum of squares. Maybe we just sum numbers. Okay, so that's a prototype. And then all we're gonna do right now is just do like, if we enter 4, then we'll do 1 plus 1 into the accumulator, and then 2 plus 2, 3 plus 3, and 4 plus 4 instead of squaring it. So we still have to do the same loop, more or less, but we'll just change it up a little bit. And this one we can test because it returns a value. So we need to return a value. So we will say sum equals 0, and we say return sum, and in here we can say for integer I equals anyone? How do we do this? I mean, there's two different ways, just like with the for loop. Zero, okay. And then the expression here, the Boolean expression, would be I You were breaking. Okay, so what do we put here? Okay, so let's try it, right? So maybe I less than equal num, and then we increment I and open close curly brace, and then we can say what? So we want to we want to do like if it's 4, then we want to do like 4 plus 4 and stuff it into the variable, and then 3 plus 3 and 2 plus 2, oops, and then 1 plus 1. Kind of like the same thing, but we're not squaring it. It was hard to understand because it's breaking up, unless someone heard what you said, Vince. Sum plus equals, maybe, I think that's what I heard. Yeah, and this one we just want to do plus, so yeah, but we're already here, like counting up, so what's here, like to sum, it's already here, and then we have the I variable here. It's going to be incrementing each time, so how do I get this to happen? 1 plus 1, 2 plus 2, 3 plus 3, 4 plus 4. Remember how this works. I was 0 and then 1 and then 2 and then 3 and then 4. I plus 1. Anyone else? Well, num's going to be 4, and we want to count from 0 to 4 or 5 or whatever. Okay, I think we're ready to test this. Okay, so let's go to, which one's this? 4. So come here and here, and then we say test case, verify some numbers function. So we want to require that if we call sum, we need to include a new header file here, 4.h. So some number should be available. It is. And then, so 4 would be what? 2, 4, 7, 11. So the answer would be 11, right? So if we use the number 4, then the answer that we get back should be 11. Did I count right? Because the test case will tell me, right? So I click on CMake. I go and find my test case, module 4. Right click and run it. And it's building. So any questions on the code while that's building? Sure. It means add 1 to I. Whatever value I is, add 1. So, oh, so I did count wrong. So it's 20, right? So Let me see here. Oh yeah, because this is what, 8, 6, that's 14. 18, 20. Yeah, okay. See, nobody corrected me, but the test case was kind enough to correct me. So we come here, and then we should be able to make this pass. I think I was just doing, I was not adding them twice. I was just adding the singular value. Okay. Also, the readings are in the free book, or if you have the Gaddis book, I post them on the announcement. So, like, that's where you, like, if you go through the readings, and you can see like what plus plus I mean and stuff like that. Stuff that I don't have a lot of time to cover. Okay, so up arrow space /s. So that's good. Questions here? Yes, since we were summing the numbers from 1 to num. So in this case, we started from 0 to the number. And we could also like start from the value of the num to 0. So we can do either or. What I want to get across here is that we have to initialize a variable, and then we have a Boolean expression. This is how we get the loop to exit, right? Or stop, and then we have an incrementer. We don't always have to increment by 1. Like if somebody asks you, well, display the even numbers from 0 to 100, then you could say for I to 100 and then just increment by 2, right? So here you would say I plus equals 2. So, yep. Oh yeah, so up arrow. So you hit the up arrow and then space -s, enter. That way it can show you details. See, if we just run the test case without the -s, then it just gives us a summary. But we always want to at least see the details so we can make sure that all our assertions or require statements are executed. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's good enough. Can we go to main and use it in main? Or are there questions here? Okay, we go to main. So we have this display numbers. So we can use that same value. I mean, it's already there. And then we can call the sum numbers function and display its output. So what I'll purposely do here is I'll create a local variable result, and then I will say result equals sum numbers and whatever value we capture from the keyboard. So execute the function sum numbers with whatever value we capture from the keyboard, and sum numbers returns a number. Save the value of sum numbers into result. Afterward, we can say cout and display the result. And maybe I should put a new line character here, \n. Okay. So I go to CMake and I'm looking for example 2, run in terminal, enter a number, 5. So then displays runs the display numbers function, displays this right here, and then our sum numbers function outputs 30. Right, so I purposely did this because some students have had troubles like understanding that, like, if you have a function that's going to return a number and has one parameter in main, you can call that function sum numbers, and knowing that it returns a value to wherever we call it from. Here we are calling sum numbers from the main region of code. So we're saying just save the return value into this local result variable, and then display the result. Right, so that's what we're doing there. For sum numbers here, you have to make sure that you return an int here, integer, and if you have that, then make sure you're not using display numbers here. Yeah, because display numbers does not work like sum numbers. Display numbers, when you see this keyword void, it means that we're just going to process. We might output to screen, we might output to a file, to a serial port, right? So notice here, there's no return statement in any lines here. In some numbers, there's a return statement here, return sum. So, and next week we'll cover functions in detail so that you all get more comfortable with them, I hope. Okay, so main. Maybe just add one more here, just a character choice, and we'll just ask the user if they want to continue or not, right? So we will use a while loop. So while choice double equal sign equals, or choice equal y, then execute. And we don't want to create an infinite loop, so we have to prompt the user enter y to continue. Any other character in this case will execute. In previous assignments, like that students turn in, they always forget the cin. Like they display enter y to continue, but sometimes they forget to include the statement capture input, save it into choice. So now we give control to the user when they run our program. They can keep on running our program or stop if they don't want to, right? So we come back here. It's the same thing we did in the previous class. So I think this is the correct one. So enter a number 3. What did I do? Oh, I forgot the \n. So I did \e. But if I do y to continue, it'll still work. And then 5. And then I just do any other character and it stops. So right here, I forgot \n. Okay. Questions? Okay, no questions. So we can close all of these guys, and then we can go into the next looping structure in C++, and that's a do while loop. So the do while loop will execute at least one time. And we come here and we can look at the high level syntax. So we have the keyword do, open close curly brace, it has to be lowercase, and then while, and then some Boolean expression. And this is a tripping point for students, and it was even for me back in the day. Semicolon is the only time that uses semicolon in a while structure, right? I don't know why they do that, but that's the way C++ works. So keyword do, open close curly brace, and then while, and then you check some Boolean expression, and then you have to put the semicolon. Let me make this large. So that's the syntax right there. So some we have to write some code here, code that changes the Boolean expression. Otherwise we will always loop, right? It'll be an infinite loop. So in that code block, you have to make sure that you write some code that changes this from true to false so that our loop can stop executing. And what else? Like, let me go over here. And what we'll do first is in main, we will write an example with the do while, okay? So we come here and we'll say include IOStream, and we'll say using cout and using statcin, and then we'll say do, we'll purposely do something just to hopefully drill a point home, while choice equal y, or choice equal y semicolon. Like, we have to put that semicolon there, otherwise our program's not going to compile. So we can say like char choice, and then we can say cout enter y to continue, and capture input and save it into the choice variable. Notice that it's still complaining that choice is undefined, and that's because code block that is within this lines is not visible to the while loop. So we have to make sure that we declare the variable before the while loop. Once we do that, then this code block, this line of code, can read this variable, because this variable lives from the beginning of our program to the end of our program. But any variables declared in here are not visible to the while statement. No way to round the double to a certain dollar amount. Usually, for those cases, you use the C++ round function, and then you have to multiply the number by 100, 1,000, or 10,000, depending on how many digits you want to significant digits you want to the right side of the decimal. So maybe in the next class we'll go through an example like that. Okay, so questions here. The structure of a do while. No questions? So again, remember the do while will execute at least one time or more than one time, right? But we know for sure that it'll execute at least one time because it has to execute this code block and then the condition's checked. The while loop may execute 0 or more times because the while loop checks the condition first and the do while checks the condition afterward. So after the code, right? The loop code. They use it a lot. Well, yeah. Well, I'm showing you a case right here. Like they're used a lot in menus, right? So we always we want to display the menu first, and then the user might exit immediately. So then the program exits. And I'm talking about C++ command line programs, right? Or they might choose option 1, 2, or 3. I mean, I know you can do that with a while loop, but predominantly in C++, that's where I see it a lot, in menus. But you're right, the while loop could probably solve most issues or most problems. Any other question? We didn't write anything. We just wrote code here in main. Yeah, that's fine. So we can run this program, make sure that it's working for us. We go here, do while, right click, run in terminal. Enter Y to continue. Okay. Enter Y to continue, uppercase Y. Enter Y to continue, Z, right? So our looping structure works, right? So let me see what the example is here. Do while. Okay, so write void function prototype name prompt user with no parameters. Okay, so meaning void prompt user with no parameters. Okay, so that's what we need to write. And this is in dowhile.h. Okay, so everything but the semicolon. We go to dowhile.cpp and write code for void function prompt user to loop until user opts not to continue. Okay, we can do that. Oh, always a semicolon. Yeah, what I said was when I copy this, I copy everything but the semicolon, and then I paste it over here. So the code I wrote in main, it's asking me, well, just use it here, right? So I'm gonna, well, except for return 0, okay. Do this here, so, and it's not knowing what cout is, so then I'll say, okay, let me come back over here, and I will include, let me do it in the CPP instead. Okay, so now I should know what cout and cin are, right? So the code we wrote in main, we encapsulated it, meaning we hide it away to have fewer lines of code in main, and then here we can say include do while prompt user, and then we can run this program. So we go to CMake. Question? Okay, so then we come back here, right click on example 3, run in terminal, and enter where to continue. Yes, no. Okay, so now what we did is we just simply moved the code here, but maybe we should do something useful here, right? Like, oh, what can we do? Let me see here. Right, void function prototype name run menu with no parameters. Okay. Void run menu. Maybe display menu, no? Display menu. And then we go to do while.cpp. Scroll down and write some code here. Well, I don't have the instructions here, but I think I remember what I was gonna do here. So here we can simply say cout like number 1 accounts receivable, new line, number 2 accounts payable. So we're creating a menu. Number 3 payroll, and then number 4 will be exit. So payroll, new line, and then number 4 exit, and then what do we put here? Select a number, something like this, right? And then new line. Okay. So now maybe we call display menu here. And let me see, did I put a new line character? Let me put 2 of them. Okay. So then we can execute this program, and when we run it now, it'll display the menu. And let me see here, select a number. So where do we do that? More than likely, well, let's just run it like this and then we can fix our code. Okay, so let's run it. Run in terminal. So now we're kind of like creating a menu, but now like we don't have it, we're not capturing input for the menu. So all I can do is like continue with Y, but I'm never, the way I have the program written, like I cannot enter a number to execute 1, 2, 3, or 4. So we should probably fix our code to do that. So we're displaying the menu, and we can make it simple. I'm trying not to make it too complicated. So, okay, so we'll do the easy part. So we'll say, okay, so integer menu choice, and then we can say how's it gonna look? Okay, I know what. We cut this and then we put it over here. Okay. So select a number, and then we say capture input, and then we ask the user for a menu choice. And all we'll do right now is we'll just simply say you selected some number, right? Menu choice. Doesn't do anything yet. So display the menu, prompt the user for a number. They give us a number, and then we'll just echo that number back to them. And then we'll just say enter Y to continue. So let's see here what happens. Questions so far? Okay, so now, you see, so now we display the menu, and then we ask them, well, select a number. So it's right here in this statement. It's waiting for user input, and as soon as we type in a number, then it's going to say you selected menu choice, and then immediately it's going to ask them if they want to continue or not. So good. There's nothing in main, just prompt user. We moved the code into do-while.cpp. Okay, so to make sure that everyone's on track, so we run the program, prompt user. Prompt user is this code right here. So there's a loop here, and we display a menu first, and then we prompt the user for a menu item number. The user gives us a menu number, and then right now all we'll do is display it back to them. Afterward, we're just going to ask them if they want to continue or not. So, and we don't have any validation. Our users up to this point are perfect, so we will say that they chose number 1. So you selected number 1, enter Y to continue. Y, we need a new line, right? Enter another number, 3, enter Y to continue, no. So I will put a new line character here. So maybe after they make a choice, then we should have the program do something. How can we do that? Like if they select accounts receivable, like if they select number 1, maybe we just tell them, hey, you selected accounts receivable. Yes, and where can we use those if statements? Or maybe when they make the choice here. Yeah. But should we write those statements here? Or should we create a function? Like kind of like we did here. Because there was nothing stopping us from writing these statements in here. The problem is going to be our prompt users are going to be, functions are going to be very large. So maybe we create another function, and or we can use the switch too, yes. And we can create another function, and then we can say execute menu choice, and I know they're going to give us some number. So we create a new function prototype, void execute menu choice with one parameter of integer type. And then we can write some code. It's not going to do anything. It's just going to tell them that they selected accounts receivable or payable or whatever, right? So, okay, so we're here. And yes, it's probably a good time to use the switch here. So we can say 1, 2, 3, 4. So 2, 3, 4, and all we're gonna do is display here. So we'll say like you selected AR menu, right? accounts receivable menu, and the AP menu. In a real program, we would have a function here that does accounts receivable stuff, and it would actually display another menu, and it would be like maybe like pay bill, enter payee, or credit payee, or something like that, right? But here we're just saying you selected AR menu, you selected AP menu, you selected payroll menu, and finally you will exit that program, semicolon. And then we come back over here. Questions here, like we're just creating more or less what we did with the switch example, but now we're like integrating it into a program. Okay, so we come back up here. So once they make their menu choice, then we can say execute menu choice, and then we pass in whatever menu choice the user gave us. And then we can take this statement out, because now this function right here is going to be handling stuff for us. Okay, so we'll run it as is, see what happens. Running terminal. Accounts receivable. So enter number 2, you selected AP menu. Enter Y to continue, yes. Select the number 3, you selected payroll menu, enter Y to continue, yes. 4, it should exit, right? But we didn't write code for the program to exit, so then it's asking us if we want to continue or not. Questions so far on what we've done? I can go to do while and notice now like the header is a lot easier to read than coming in here and trying to figure out what this program is doing. We can just come here and then we can just read the function prototype. We have a function named prompt user, we have a function named display menu, and then we have a function named execute menu choice. And if we want to see how this program's working, then we would come to the CPP and start reading the function block code. Questions so far on how this is working? Like, this is the time to ask. Usually means like a missing semicolon somewhere. So make sure it wouldn't be giving you a prompt for error if there was not an error, right? So make sure you have a semicolon at the end of the while. So the do while right here. Yeah. Usually, like if that's happening where you're getting like, you can either number 1 do a build, and then the build will more or less tell you where the error is. Or you can look for missing semicolons at the end of statements. Yes, it's right here, this one. Yes. Mm-hmm. The do while is just looping. So the do while only depends on choice to keep on executing. So as long as choice is Y, the do while will keep on looping. So display menu, as we saw, it just displays the menu. We prompt the user for output, for input, and we just tell them, ask them to enter a number, and they'll enter a number from 1 to 4. We'll use that number they gave us, send it into the execute menu choice, and then we'll just tell them like, hey, you selected a contextual menu or AP menu, payroll menu, or you will exit the program. So it's important to understand that as long as choice is Y, it'll keep on looping. Oh yeah, absolutely. We did. So do while, see display menu right here, and then do while.cpp. I mean, all it's doing is displaying this. You see display menu, yeah. And then execute. Go ahead. Yeah, so execute menu choice, this function execute menu choice is defined right here. So whatever user input we get, we pass it into this function, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, and maybe here, if they select something else, then maybe we should just tell them invalid menu choice. And that's a use case for using a do while. You can make it work with a while, but the do while makes it. I mean, it's a good use case for it. Any other questions? Yeah, I can help you during the lab time. There is an assignment today. It'll open at at 7 o'clock. You have an assignment on your calendar. It should take about 5 minutes. You just have to write the truth tables for and, or, and not in a Word document and upload them into the assignment and submit the assignment. Yeah, so if you have errors, I can help after you complete the assignment. But we're here till 7:25, so the lab time's still 7:25. Which one? Do while? Okay. Any other questions? Yes. Usually you want to put the default at the bottom. If you write the truth table in the comment section, make sure that it's readable to me. Like, put it in a way where I can read it. Like, I don't try to figure out what you wrote. It'll be due at 7:25. Yeah. It'll be available at 7 p.m. Yeah, during the lecture. I mean the lab time. A class assignment. Yeah, at 7 p.m. Class assignment. Yeah. Any other questions? So I have one for you all. How can we make this loop stop looping if the user chooses 4 for menu choice? Because according to our menus, like if they choose 4, then our program should exit. So how can we make that happen? I mean, we probably don't want to use return. Put a do while in the execute menu choice. So if they type 4, like we want to exit the program, maybe we don't want to ask them enter way to continue. We just, but I think Abner was kind of like almost there. There's a couple of ways to do it, at least. Think about it. We'll continue this example. No. C++ ignores white space, I think. So yeah, so like if we do this, like C++ ignores a white space. Yeah, so we'll complete this example and then next week. So hopefully you'll have some ideas by then. I think in less than a minute that assignment should be available. Let me stop the recording.